I'm man enough to admit that I just asked Darren Haruo Rae how you pronounce the middle name. I mean, listen, when you do what I do for a living, can you imagine how many names I've mispronounced?
Well, it's funny. When my first job in middle school, I was a soccer referee. And one of the things I would have to do is you'd have to read all the players' names and like tap the shin guards, check the cleats. And so I have nightmares of trying to get people's names right because I would just butcher people's names since I was.
Dude, I would do it on the air or from the stage. Yeah. Right. And I remember I went to work in Louisiana and, hey, come see us this weekend. We're going to be over at Richard 66 and the phones light up. I answer the phone and the guys, this Cajun says, "It's Miss Shaw, you idiot." Okay. All right. I should have known. My fault. First day on the air.
Yeah.
First day on the air. And it's been like that ever since then. So I always tell some people, listen, I'm gonna butcher your name at some point, but we'll all just move forward. I won't be the first and I damn sure won't be the last.
Yeah. As long as we're all aware.
So San Jose State grad, huh?
Yeah, 2013. So it's about 10 years now.
Wow. Look at you graduating 10 years out of college, Darren Haruo Rae, and knowing that, was this one something you always wanted to do? I mean, you were a film major?
Yeah. So RTVF, radio, television, film, but I basically just did all the film classes. I didn't really do anything else there. As far as like filmmaking, it was something I always knew I wanted to do. My dad was a huge movie nerd. I don't know how many people actually know laserdisc, if you remember those. There's the classic laserdisc VHS debate. But no, so it's my dad would have a wall of laserdiscs in our garage, and he still has them. And we never rented movies because my dad's like, why would I pay $5 to rent a movie when I know I'm going to watch it 4 times? So I might as well buy it. And so he amassed this collection of, just everything, from kids movies to adult. Like he showed me Space Odyssey when I was like 8. You know what I mean? And
that's pretty deep.
Yeah. So we sat down because, I love sci-fi. My dad loves sci-fi. And we sat down. He's just like, okay, what do you think this means? Just like afterwards, just like a full psychological breakdown of an 8-year-old's understanding of it. And so I owe a lot to, my dad being so invested into movies. And, when I got the chance out of high school, the fact that my parents were like, 1, you're going to college, but 2, you do what you want. Like, don't look back on your life, 10, 20 years later and wish you could have at least tried it. Because the very least you can always start over. So.
Don't you love the fact that movies are digital now? I mean, I used to, bless your dad's heart with the laser disc and stuff, but I used to hate having to like the DVDs and then the compact, first of all, the VHS and then the compact disc, and they just would take up space and grow dust. And now it's all on my TV.
I don't know. I think there's something, it's kind of like, vinyl and record, how that's kind of making a comeback. Something like having something tangible and physical. And like old Laserdisc, you would get these like leather bound books with like these like, pages you can flip through. Like Star Wars was like this, like, it's just the whole experience of opening the box. And then you have like the behind the scenes stuff too. And so I think it makes you more appreciative and more selective, because I don't know if you have the same thing, modern, streaming platforms. It's like, how do you pick what to watch? Because you literally are just thrown 2 million things in your face. So it's like, I'll just go back to something comfortable, something that I've already seen, because it scares me looking at all these different icons. So,
well, see, my thing is I have an 11 and a 13-year-old. Right. And so I'm at that stage. I'm still where repetition, like you're saying, repetition is the way human brains form connections. In my generation, we watched Star Trek and Gilligan's Island.
Right.
And Brady Bunch 1,000,000 times, and everybody does that. And I do love having the movies just available on digital instead of having to go and pick one up and stuff like that. I do love just having that, because all I need is just, honestly, unlike your dad, I hate watching movies over again. I do. I don't read books over again. And I'm a big reader.
Yeah.
I read a book one time and I'm done, and I'm not even big on watching reruns of TV shows I like, but kids are repetition. So that's what you do, is you have repetition.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful to have the little repetition and being able to pull up, oh, you want to watch Minions, or do you want to watch Hotel Transylvania 3, or do you want to watch, Wall-E? What do you want to do? What were the seminal movies? Because you're saying your dad's such a film buff. What was the seminal movies like? If I had to go think of the 17-year-old Darren. What would he say his 3 favorite movies are? Not this guy who's a lot more erudite and experienced and into the avenue of filmmaking. What did that kid just go, yeah, I can watch these over and over again?
I mean, there's always classic Spielberg, Jurassic Park, Zemeckis, Back to the Future, Star Wars, of course, those are kind of the staples. But thinking back then, like things that really resonated with me was Space Odyssey was definitely one. I made a point, there was a theater near me when I was growing up that was closing, and like their final screening was a 70 mil print of Space Odyssey. And so I actually got to see it in a theater, like how it would have been when it came out. And that was cool. The second movie I would say is Leon the Professional. I don't know if you know that one. Jean Reno.
Was that about the assassin?
Mm-hmm. And Natalie Portman as the little girl.
Yeah, Natalie Portman as the young girl.
And I always loved films that kind of portray this father-daughter, father-son dynamic and this kind of parenting aspect to it. Like unexpected, unwarranted parenting, like from like the least likely possible person, right? An assassin. And so I always think those are very interesting plays and kind of speak, just to humans in general, like having a child, not knowing what to do with it, like your first child. Third movie, that's a tricky one. God, I would have to go back and say Indiana Jones, because I just watched that so many times. The first one, that was just like when I didn't know what to put on, I would always just put on Raiders of the Lost Ark. So
now that because the entertainment factor, right? I mean, at that point, we're just about the entertainment factor. What age did it turn into? And we're going to talk about what all you're doing and the film Nice. Is it Nice or Nice?
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Nice because that's been up at CineQuest and a brilliant piece of work and all the other stuff you've done. But I just love, you don't get a chance to talk to filmmakers and go, how does that work? So excuse me while I just kind of nerd out for a minute because I love movies. Not to the point where I'd want to make one, but I love movies. When did it flip for you? When did you start noticing the filmmaking technique and not just the entertainment?
I think that was always kind of part of the fun of it for me, though, was figuring out how they did stuff. I remember like Little Shop of Horrors, watching that and like really getting interested in puppeteering and Googling back then, whatever what it was back then and that kind of stuff. So I've always kind of had this love for figuring out how they did it. And I think it's funny, when I got into the industry, people ask me, hey, can you not watch movies anymore? Does your taste change? Is it not as fun? And I think I'm like, no, it's even more fun because I see all the trials that go behind it. And I see the amount of effort to put, one person on a screen. And you have those movies that kind of resonate with you like your whole life, like something like The Professional. And you don't realize it's like there's 2 people on screen, but there's 80 people behind the camera that you don't even think about that are there. And so it's like, that makes me that much more appreciative of like how you can take risks and how you can keep something small and subjective and to the point and kind of keep. The hardest thing about movies is keeping it contained, keeping the story where you want it to be and not just, oh, it's a movie, we got to do explosions, we got to do big. I mean, Nice, we did explosions, but you know what I mean? Just going overboard, over the top, doing everything you can. But the point is, it's, at the core of every good story, doesn't matter if it's sci-fi, doesn't matter if it's, a biopic, doesn't matter, whatever, there's this driving human force that we can all relate to. And that is so hard to capture, like, let alone in any form of storytelling. So to be able to do that with a crew of 80 people, with actors, with everything else, I feel like I've always had that sort of appreciation for it. So like, even to this day, I still watch movies and think like, oh, that's cool how they did that, but it doesn't detract me. It just impresses me more of how they accomplished it. So
I am intrigued, especially as I got older and you started thinking about all the untold things. And I had a guest on, lady was on a big TV show. And I was telling her how I was talking to my family and we're like, think about what it took, because it was a shot of them on a loading dock. They went to the main character, they said something, they turned around and talked to the person who's at the loading dock. And then they had another angle for that pack. And it was literally 10 seconds worth of film.
Yeah.
10 seconds worth of action.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I told my family, imagine how many times they had to do that and reset the camera and do all the different angles and get the lighting and get continuity and stuff for 10 seconds of action. And she was like, you have no idea.
Yeah.
She goes, we filmed all day before for 40 seconds. She goes, literally 8 a.m. to 5 to get 40 seconds of movement.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh. And that's the thing that's mind blowing. It's the stuff that we get to take for granted, but you don't.
Yeah. It's the little details that add up and what makes, a movie professional or, it makes it resonate. Like look at something like Lawrence of Arabia. Like think of the shots, just a perfect example of this, like close up Peter O'Toole, like sitting on the horse. And then you cut back to a wide shot where they're 2 miles away. They can't just run there. They have to drive there. They have to pack up all the gear. And back then it's film cameras. The cameras weigh hundreds of pounds. They got to load them up on trucks, make sure there's no footprints, make sure there's nothing that shows that there's other people in this land, and drive all the way, shoot that. Like obviously there's you plan it so you can shoot more efficiently, but just the logistics of it is incredible. And definitely when I went to college and started learning about scheduling and how to break stuff down, it really is incredible. Like even something like once we dive into Nisei, for example, like the war scene, that was shot over 3 days. And a lot of it was, we're shooting up on the hillside. We're shooting an explosion a different day. So they have to react to the explosion, but they don't actually get to see the explosion. But we have to know which way their eye lines and make sure they match so it doesn't look like they're looking away. And so I think in our film, it's all of 4 minutes, 3 minutes, like that whole action sequence. And that was one of the biggest chunks was 3 days of filming that stuff. So it's a lot of planning and details. So
wow, I find it fascinating from that. And like I said, I watched your Park Acadia, which you won some awards with. It's a wonderful little. It's like 28 minutes, and it's a little sci-fi.
Yeah.
And it's fun. And this was, as you said, when I brought it up to you before we started, and you're like, well, there's a blast from the past. That, to you is like, man, that was a long time ago. Do you watch stuff like, I'll listen to shows of mine, right? I was literally doing this. I was going through some files, and I'll listen to some shows of mine from the 90s. That's right. I'm that old. From the 90s. And my thought was, my wife asked me, she goes, what'd you think? And I'm like, I'm not sure I like that guy. I mean, honestly, I'm not sure that guy and I would get along.
Yeah.
Yeah. What does it look like because you have so many different representations. So when you sit back and see that, what's your take? Because it's something you obviously should be proud of. I found it very entertaining.
Yeah.
But for you, it was still early in your journey.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a roller coaster. I can tell you the experience for every single project. You finish shooting, you're exhausted. It's very rewarding, fulfilling. It's the greatest thing ever. You go to editing, you get the first cut of the edit, and you go, oh my God, this is the worst thing ever. Why did I ever decide to be a filmmaker? This thing's a complete disaster. Everyone's going to know I'm a fraud. Then you keep editing it, and you're like, okay, this is starting to get better. And eventually you get the finished project, and you're like, hey, this is really great. Really great for like the initial year. About 2 years after that, you hate it. You think it's awful. You're at screenings, you're kind of just like putting your head down, just like, oh, why did I do that choice? And then you kind of look back at it, I would say like the 3 to 4 year mark after it's completed, and you go, that's actually pretty good. Like I would do stuff differently now, but I actually see what I was doing and, the intention there. And that's the biggest thing. Like, I actually, during this project, I went back to San Jose State and like help, teach students and stuff like that. And, the biggest thing I can tell them is, one, just make stuff. Don't, even if you don't feel ready, just make stuff. But two, when you look back on stuff, obviously you look at it now, you don't think it's the greatest. But the question is, was that the best you could have done in the moment? And if the answer was yes, then that's great. Because that means the fact that you're looking at it now with a different lens means you've grown from it and you've become a better filmmaker. You've become, you've made progress in your career. And so that's the way I kind of view it. And so I'm much more appreciative of my old work too. Cause like, I'll admit, like my older work right after, I was, didn't even want to look at it, didn't want to touch it. I was just like, that's kind of crap. But I think now that I'm further in my career, I've begun to appreciate it more, if that makes sense.
Wow. That is, young punks like you have a lot of wisdom, really pissed me off. That was brilliant. Was that the best I could do at the time? I mean, especially if you're in the world of art, And I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's music, painting, filmmaking, whatever. That's a great question to ask yourself.
And
was that the best I could do at the time?
And it's subjective too, in the sense of like, I'm not saying is that the greatest piece of art you could have made at the time, because filmmaking is a team sport, right? You have so many people involved. And the reality of filmmaking is you're constantly compromising. It's like, I don't have enough time in the day to get all my shots. I don't have enough time in the day to, do one more take and stuff like that. And so it's about mediating and finding this happy medium and trusting the people you work with. And so when I say, is that the best you could have done? I don't mean it necessarily it's the greatest film ever. It's you were at a place to get the most out of you and your crew. And then that's the end result. That's your product out of it. So.
And that's, I would think I don't understand it is because I know in music, there's a producer in music, but I don't know if a producer in film and television are the same things, because I know like in TV, they give people production credits, actors production credits, because it's a way of paying them more money.
Right.
And they're not really doing anything.
Or paying them less.
Or they're the producer. Yeah. So, and maybe that has syndication rights. I don't know. Maybe that's something that factors into that. I don't understand all the contracts and stuff like that. What is the difference with a producer and a director in film?
It's funny. I always say that the director, you can be the dumbest person on set. You can know the least, which is funny that it always comes with the egos, right? The directors. The point of the director, in my opinion, is being able to facilitate your actors, being able to work with your cinematographer, your production designer, your sound designer. You're the person in the moment having to make the decisions. You're the yes or no, like coming up. It's like, do we want to shoot this now? Do we want to shoot this coverage? Yes or no? Producer is, boots on the ground, lining everything up, right? Arranging stuff. Like obviously bigger productions, you have location managers, like associate producers, production managers, stuff like that. But basically the production side of it is the logistics side of it. It's like, all right, let's make sure our locations are locked. Let's make sure when we show up today, there's going to be bathrooms. Let's make sure, you know what I mean? Like the prop bus will be here. And so it's all this almost like, I don't want to say thankless, but it's a lot of the back end stuff that isn't as much glory as the title director, right? Director is the one everyone sees sitting in the chair yelling action. But in the reality, it's like, I would argue like as a director, you almost do the least amount of work. Like obviously with this project, I was much more involved and I was hands-on from the very beginning. But producers are very much critical, and producers aren't necessarily the ones to like, some producers are like, they'll be behind the director saying, hey, I think you should do one more. Let's try it like that. A lot of directors don't want that. I have an amazing producing team like Nick Martinez, Jessica Olthoff, who, I trust creatively as well. So if I'm going a million miles an hour, my head's all over the place worrying about shots, if they come up to me and be like, hey, I don't think you got it, like I'll listen. And so that's a trust there, right? And I think that's very important in that regard. But there's so many million positions on crew. Like, I don't know if you saw the credits for Nisei where it just kept going and going and going and going.
And that's any movie in the world.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, Marvel got around that by giving you little Easter eggs to make you sit through the damn credits.
Exactly.
And there was a story out there talking about new parents. If you're looking for new names, watch the credits, because you'll see names that you've never seen or thought of.
Yeah. And
I'm like, that's flipping brilliant. Plus those people deserve credit because there's a whole lot of work on that. It's when you sit back and as a director, when you hear the stories of Stanley Kubrick, do you look at that with, wow, I'd love to have that much power? Or do you look at that as, who in the world would want to do that? Or do you fall in between?
I think I kind of fall in between in that regard. Like, I don't know if I agree with him or, someone like Fincher who will do 100 takes and they have this ideology of you have to break the actor, break the, performance till the point that's what makes a good actor. I don't know if I should name names, but actually my first job ever, I was a production assistant on a movie up here and I got to drive an actor that worked with Kubrick, and he would just tell me, he goes, you would just do take after take after take after take. And like, he wouldn't tell you anything. It's just like a cut, go again, cut, go again, cut, go again. And the point is he was just driving you to the point of exhaustion. And I think like the movie was supposed to take 3 months to film budgeted wise, and they ended up taking like 8 months because of that's his process. And so I mean, that's his style, right? And I love his movies. I think he's an incredible filmmaker. I don't see myself that way. I think a big part of directing is getting casting right to start with. And not saying he got casting wrong, but I kind of describe it as, like you're a manager or coach of a professional team, not like a T-ball team or a Pee-wee team, where I'm not here to tell you how to play the game. I'm here to sort of point you in the right direction when I think you need to change or try something different. And I think that applies to directing towards actors as well. Like, I'm casting you because I know you're going to bring something to this role, but I'm not going to teach you how to be this role. It's more of, I want you to try it a little differently, come in a little, softer, harder, something like that. But it's not an overall, like, starting from a ground, like, rebuild, if that makes sense. Like a big fan of mine is someone like Christopher Nolan, who people argue, his performances tend to be a little weaker, but he has such, purposeful overarching themes where flatter performances still kind of lend itself to his style. And again, so I'm kind of in the middle, because I don't want flat performances, but I also see the merit of like pushing, understanding what's more important in the situation than trying to, spend millions of dollars, doing hundreds of takes on. And at the end of the day, you're going to see 5 seconds of it. So,
well, and that's you go to the other side. Christopher Nolan might work with Christian Bale? Is that it? The Batman?
Yeah.
Because Christian Bale is the actor's Kubrick, right? He wants to do 91 takes, and you have to go, because I always read one time is that Kubrick was trying to get the actors to stop acting.
Yeah. And that.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. But I would say that works when you have a lot of time and money, and you're Stanley Kubrick, and you get to do whatever you want. I think in the independent space, the reality of it is like, digital technology allows, much smaller budget projects to take place, which is great. But I was talking to my cinematographer about this, and like, it goes to every position, it goes to acting, lighting, whatever. It's like, you almost need to say, this is good enough. This is good enough, not in a bad way, not saying we're compromising and giving in, but it's good enough because would you rather have one perfect shot, or would you rather make your day? Would you have one beautiful, greatest looking thing ever, or would you actually have a finished project? And like I said, the idea of compromising a film is, the reality is everyone can keep tweaking and adjusting and doing stuff and again and again and again. But I think a big part of being a director is essentially you're the one that has to pull the plug and say, that's good enough. Let's move on. We need these other pieces. Otherwise, all of this is going to be for naught. So,
well, you're saying that you try to choose the right actor. And I find that fascinating. Right. So when you're going through the audition process, right, and you're trying to find that actor, and I had scholarship offers to be an actor, but I didn't, because I didn't have any courage. I saw the best actor I ever saw when I went to school. His highlight of his career was like a 40-second walk-on in Barnaby Jones, an old TV detective series with Buddy Ebsen back in the 70s.
Right.
And he was the best I ever saw on stage. He was amazing. Will Collins, look him up. He was amazing. And I'm like, well, if he can't make it, I'm not even going to try, because it is such a cutthroat thing. And there's a lot of times it has nothing to do with you. That if you don't look the part, but you have to bring something. There's nobody who told Christopher Walken to talk like this, or Al Pacino or anybody, or Nick Cage. You have to have something that brings to the role. And it's easy to pick up Nick Cage now, or, let's forget that his uncle is Francis Ford Coppola. So let's go Christopher Walken, right? But it's hard to pick that guy. Here's a guy from New York who's a dancer,
right,
who talks funny, Where does that, when you are casting roles, what is it? Do you see it in your mind, or are you waiting for the actor to show you who that person is?
Well, I think, first of all, I don't think I'm that great of a writer. So I'm always excited to see what an actor will bring. And whenever we do initial auditions or callbacks or whatever, I tend to, let them do it how they want first. I don't want to come in with a preconceived notion. Something I like to do, though, is write backstory, right? Like a 1 paragraph, 2 paragraph about the character, not related to the scene or the story or whatever, just kind of about their life, and then give that to them. And then see how they register and use that to, bring it in. And because it's, you talk about the authenticity of performance too. So it's like, in a space where we can only do 2-3 takes per shot. It's like, we don't have time to get them there. They just have to kind of understand that. And like you said, the reality is a lot of it's luck, right place, right time, like having the right look, being the flavor of the week, the style of like actor that people are looking for. And that's the harsh reality of it. Like, I know for a fact, I could never be an actor with the amount of, rejection, like day in, day out. Like my actors while we're shooting, they'd go back to their hotels and they had to do more auditions. They were doing like 5 auditions back in their hotel room. And it's just this constant grind. And so I have, the utmost respect for them. I think it was Vin Diesel who actually talked about that. When he started acting he had like a bunch of roommates, like 4 of them or something. And he actually said, I wasn't even the best out of all my friends in that group. I was just the one that stuck with it the longest. And it's really just making yourself available and just believing yourself and staying, true to yourself, and even just hoping that opportunity will come. I mean, even look at the Oscars this year, Everything Everywhere All at Once, right? Michelle Yeoh, like she's been in a million things, but out of all the roles she gets, it's, a sci-fi, dimension traveling. What was it? The director said, like, we want to put our mom in the Matrix, basically. And, it's like, who would have thought that would be the role that gets her the Oscar and stuff like that? So it's like, you never know. It's like, so going into it, I think a lot of people, especially actors and directors, go into the industry because of the fame aspect of it, the money aspect of it. And not saying they're not good performers or artists, but I think they're thinking about that more than the art. And if you go into the intention that this is what you love doing and you would do this, whether you're making $1 million or making $0, like I think, no matter what, you'll find a way. So,
yeah, because the fame and the $20 million a film paycheck brings its own troubles. Mm-hmm. That you think it's gonna solve everything. And everything's going to be great and everything's that. Well, now when you start that, you're the gravy train for a whole lot of people. And oh, by the way, Mark, it looks like you've gained 3 pounds. I remember hearing that quote from Mel Gibson that he would try to do 3 or 4 films in a year because that's as long as he could keep the Mel Gibson shape. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons that Hugh Jackman wanted to stop doing Wolverine is he didn't want to have to work as hard to get that Wolverine shape.
Yeah.
And you don't even think about that, you got $20 million in the bank, but you're eating lettuce and getting up at 3 a.m. for your first of 6 workouts.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, I think him and Henry Cavill, they would basically dehydrate themselves for like 2 days. It's like, oh, I got a shirtless scene coming up. I'm just not going to drink water for 2 days. So my skin tightens up so you can see the abs better. And it's like, any actor you talk to, that's the most unhealthy thing you can do. And anytime they're not on a movie, that's why they don't look like that, right? Because it's like impossible. So
it's the thing that, again, all the stuff that you don't think about. That's the beauty of filmmaking, is the escape into fantasy. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting here thinking, everything, everywhere, all at once. You had to sit back and go, hey, I did that movie. I did that. It's Park Arcadia. I did that movie already. I just didn't have the $50-80 million budget.
Yeah. No, I'm glad that movie did so well. I think it's a good jump for, Asian Americans in cinema in general. And I think it really kind of opened the box for, new voices, new opportunities, and, new actors in general to get lead roles. So I'm very excited and glad that it did so well.
Well, that and Crazy Rich Asians.
That was the first kind of domino that fell, that kind of put us on the map, I feel like. So
once you started realizing that every culture is pretty much the same culture. Mm-hmm. We all have the crazy aunt. We all have the sister we don't know about. We all have the brother, and then once it became, I see this in film as either you recognize yourself or you recognize who you want to be. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think we all saw that. We saw ourselves and we saw who we wanted to be. And I think, and that's when it breaks down. That's, the thing I love about living in California is, and America. My son was saying, hey, I want to go to France and try French food. And he goes, what's American food? I said, American food's great because it's all of our food.
Yeah.
Right? You don't think anything of it. We go to a Chinese restaurant or a Japanese or an Ethiopian or anything, and it's our food. And I said, that's the beautiful thing about America. It's the blending of everything.
And it's good.
Yeah, and that's how you become straight. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come right back because we want to talk about Nisei.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And the important, that it's just an important film. We're going to come right back with Darren Haruo Rae. Haruo! Like I told you earlier. It's not the first time, won't be the last. We'll be right back, and here's what we do.
At Reed Animal Hospital, they treat your pet as if it was their own. Now, I'm a very satisfied customer. I can tell you they mean that. It's not a chain. It truly is about helping you and your pet enjoy life together. Dr. David Reed and his entire staff take the time to get to know you and your pet. I can tell you what I like. He's helped me better understand what my dog Luna needs and how I can take care of her more efficiently and kindly. Find them online at reedanimalhospital.com. 2 locations, Saratoga and Campbell. Little secret from me to you, Dr. Reed actually gives you his cell number so he can answer your questions and concerns. They really are committed to you and your pet. reedanimalhospital.com. Sterling Oak Cabinetry has one goal: to build the cabinets of your dreams. They literally specialize in custom cabinetry. No cookie cutter, everything looks the same stuff that you find at the big box stores. Your kitchen is the centerpiece of your home, and your home is your biggest investment. They can work with you or your designer to build just what you want with the materials and finish that you want. And because they're a brand new company, they'll be getting busier and busier, but if you order right now, they'll get your order to you in 6 to 8 weeks. In the world of cabinetry, that's blindingly fast. Contact Rob Scovman at rskovmand@yahoo.com or go to sterlingoakcabinetry.com and get your dreams made reality tomorrow.
So when it comes to Nisei, did you feel the weight of the responsibility of making that movie? Because it is an important film. It is an important film, and it's a story that's been told and needs to keep being told.
Yeah. I mean, so I grew up with these stories my whole life, being Japanese American, having my grandfather around, and I just kind of assumed it was common knowledge, like, let alone like West Coast alone, finding out like not a lot of people know about it. And so, I would anecdotally, my grandfather would tell me stuff and I would hear things. I would do book reports on it whenever I could. Actually, in high school, my history teacher, Mr. Hoffman, give him a shout out. He always let me do movies instead of reports because he knew I wanted to be a filmmaker. And so I actually did a lot of, documentary style footage on that, about my grandfather, about the camps. When it came time to doing it as a film, I've been thinking about this project since I've been in film school, so 20 or 15 years now, and I think when I was younger, the weight and responsibility I felt from it was too daunting. And I didn't feel like I was capable or ready to tell this story. And it's always tough with biopics, right? Or anytime it's about someone, a real person, where you don't want to mess it up, whether it's family member, whether it's, someone famous, whether it just being a real person, you don't want to mess it up. And I think that kind of fear kept me from exploring this. And I knew, like I said, I always wanted to do this. This was always on my radar. It's like, if I can do one film, it had to be this film. And actually during COVID was kind of a resurgence for me, just kind of like my head was like down in the sand, just working crazy, doing commercials, all this stuff. And COVID, like, it was finally like, there's no work, there's nothing to do. You actually have to sit in your thoughts and think about what you want to do. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I should start to revisit this and actually like, be upfront and just hit it, just go straight at it and see what happens. And the thing I kind of realized was, you're not going to get it right. You're not going to get someone's life right, no matter how hard you try, because you only know a small fraction of it. You don't know all the little nuances. You don't know all the intimacies of it. And so it doesn't matter how much research, it doesn't matter how many books I read or how many people I talk to, it's not going to be 100% accurate. So what is the importance of this story and why do I want to tell this story? And it's kind of twofold. So first, this is kind of jumping ahead. When we started doing it, we started the pre-production of the project. We actually, we partnered with San Jose State and kind of did a educational thing over the summer and taught students and let them work on it. Like my first day of class, I was like, all right, how many people have seen Saving Private Ryan? It was like 2 hands. How many people have seen Band of Brothers? Like no hands. And it dawned on me that my generation is one of the last generations that has a direct connection to the subject matter. And so it's like, they don't have grandparents that they could talk to. They don't have parents that they can talk to about what World War II in general, right? And I think, history kind of fades out of existence once you stop talking about it, once you stop having that direct connection. And so that just kind of solidified the importance of this story, especially now where you're getting into these generations that don't know the tragedies, and you don't know what the Japanese American community has gone through. And especially this day and age with everything going on, the model minority, Stop Asian Hate, stuff like that. You need to be reminded of, our own past, our own history, so we don't fall into the same mistakes. And so that was what kind of solidified me to doing it. But kind of going back to my own kind of personal okay with it was I talked to my mom and I was kind of like, hey, I want to do a story on grandpa and I'm thinking about this. And the interesting thing about it was my mom didn't know a lot of the stories because why would he tell her that? He's not going to tell his child about these horrors that he experienced in the war. And so it was actually a learning experience for my mom at the same time. So it's like, I'm doing these research, I'm looking through his interviews and I'm telling my mom, it's like, hey, did you know this happened? And she would go like, no, he never told me that. And so it was this really rewarding experience to be able to go through it like as an entire family, like my mom, my sister, my dad, were all involved with it. And so that made me feel comfortable. And once I read the script, in the film itself, my mom made a lot of the props. She made the flag, she made the doll, stuff like that. But kind of getting that validation and okay through the whole process of it, saying like, hey, what you're doing is right and we're proud of you for doing this, that helped me, make it.
It's so tenderly done. And you're right. I think that's a great observation. My father fought in World War II.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to remember, I'm an oops baby. They were, as my sisters like to tell me, I was a Thanksgiving meal that got out of hand, right? So my father was old when he had me. And so I still have that. And at no point did he ever talk about what happened in World War II, because that was the generation really all the way up. We're better about it now in the current conflict. And even now, we're still not good about it.
Yeah.
But back then it was, and that was for a Caucasian guy, right? I mean, and he didn't want to talk about it. I can't imagine. And Nisei stands for second generation, right? And what we asked those young men who willingly did it, that's the thing you have to remember. They willingly did it, of going in and fighting, knowing that a lot of the soldiers, much less the country behind them, did not support them and did not trust them. And it's mind-blowing. And that's why I'm so happy you made this, because we hear about a lot of society's ills today, right? Well, it's not nearly as bad as what came before you, right? I grew up in South Alabama in the 60s. And one of the reasons I don't live there is because I could not stand. I got through college in the 60s and 70s, graduated, and just couldn't stand being there.
Right.
I tried to be out. It's different now. There's still bastions, but it's different now. But I could not take the overt racism.
Right.
Just something me is who I am. And when I hear people complain a lot about today's society, I'm like, it almost like you have no idea what people in the 60s were going through, much less in the 40s. And the sacrifices those young men and women made. Really, I was thinking this when I was seeing it. You should find a different part of this story and tell it every 15 years in a different way. As you grow as a filmmaker, as you grow in the different stuff, I would love to see this just be, what's that Ethan Hawke movie where Paris, sunrise, sunset, how they keep just revisiting it every,
yeah.
But I would love for you to revisit it as you grow, because I think you are 100% right. It shocks me that 2 people said Saving Private Ryan and nobody watched Band of Brothers. because we are losing. And to this day, nobody talk about about World War I with anybody. Crickets. Nobody understands World War I. Nobody understands the horror that World War I was. And it's a shame that we lose that. I am thrilled to see that there's still some source. What was that film that came out a few years ago that was one continuous shot or was made to look like
1917.
Yeah, and that's about World War I and the horrors that it is. It's such a fascinating thing. And when your mother got to see the final cut, what was that like for you?
Me and my sister always laugh about this because my mom is the harshest critic and the most like upfront person. And so I could tell it meant a lot to her. I could tell that, she loved it. But it was funny. She watched it. She said, yeah, it's good. But my friends and other people were just like, well, she didn't like cry. She didn't react. And I'm like, well, no, you have to understand, like in an Asian family, if you say you're going to do a good job and you do it, like that's what you set out to do. Like what did she expect? Like you did what you said you're going to do. What do you want, a reward for that? It was funny though. Cause like even going back, like when I asked her like, hey, can you make the flag for the movie? And she was kind of hemming and hawing about it. She goes, I don't know, like blah, blah, blah. And I was like, it would mean a lot. And then she goes, nah, I don't really want to. And then she calls me. She goes, so what's the flag for? Like, what's this? Is he like this stupid thing he's going to put it on his shoulder and run into the battlefield, like some like platoon moment or something like that? And I was like, no. Let me send you the script, read it, and then you can tell. And then so she read the script. She goes, okay, I get it now. Okay, yeah, I'll make the flag. I thought you were just going to do some dumb thing, over his shoulder running around with it kind of thing. And so,
wow, mom is hardcore.
Yeah, not Park, but another project I did a few years ago. I didn't write it. It was like a proof of concept for some producers to make the feature of it. We made that. They wrote it, and it wasn't very good. I'll be honest, and I knew it wasn't good, but showed it to my mom. Sits down at her computer, we watch it. Movie ends, doesn't say anything, and takes a breath. She goes, did you write that? And I said, no. She goes, oh, thank God. And she gets up and walks away. So I love it because like if she gives the stamp of approval, then it's good. So and she likes it. She likes Nisei. So
can you think of some movies off the top of your head that you love because they're so well written?
Off the top of my head, Blue Valentine, Derek Cianfrance. I think he's a fantastic screenwriter. He also did Place Beyond the Pines. I think he just has a way with, kind of modern storytelling. I think kids movie, like one of the most structurally sound movies that because I just watched it recently, was Wreck-It Ralph. That animation movie.
The first one?
The first one, yeah. The second one was bad. No, that one was terrible.
Not so much.
But structurally, from like a storytelling point of view, it hits all the beats that it needs to hit, and it wraps up perfectly. I know that's kind of a weird divergent from that stuff.
No, because I think two of the best movies off the top of my head are Up and Coco.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about tie a story together. And I had a songwriter tell me one time, he doesn't like songs that make you try to cry. He makes a song that makes it so you cry for your own reasons.
Yeah.
Right. And you have to be able to go, that's such a beautiful moment but it's for my reasons. It's not because you're showing me a child dying, or anything like that. You're showing me that beautiful moment where all of us will cry, and we may cry for 5 different reasons.
Yeah. And I feel like, that's at the kind of the heart of any good film, right? It's not beating you over the head with a message. It's not telling you to feel this way. It's not feeling you should feel happy. It's not telling you should feel guilty. It's presenting you with a situation, and your own interpretation is what kind of, breaks you down at the end. And I think that's the hardest thing to get right. So
would you, because I know you're talking about the indie world, but a lot of the people in the indie world end up being, Hollywood is actually coming to look for you guys to bring a new eye into it. Would you love a superhero movie? Would you go, it's just, and you can be completely honest one way or the other.
I would, in the sense of like, it depends on what capacity, right? Like if I come in from the ground and I get to not necessarily write it, but be kind of part of the structuring of it. I don't know necessarily coming in for like a third movie. Like if it's like maybe a new character, a new hero, that excites me, kind of building the world out that way.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say no, of course.
Yeah, when they start ranking up the truckloads of money.
Well, yeah, like Eternals was the director Chloe Zhao. She did Nomadland before that, right? And then took off, gets $100 million Marvel movie. So they're looking for you. I mean, Christopher Nolan was nobody before Batman, really.
Yeah, I mean, and the fact that and they let him create his vision.
Mm-hmm. That's the biggest thing with the superhero movies, right? Is bringing you in because of your indie skill set, right? Because he had Memento, and they were like, okay, I want to see this unique perspective. Once they start trying to control it too much, that's when it, you kind of lose track of it. Kind of like Edgar Wright was supposed to do Ant-Man, and him and Marvel just butted heads because Edgar Wright wants to do Edgar Wright things, and Marvel wants to do Marvel things, and so it just didn't work out. So depends on what the project is.
Yeah, and or you've got to be Jon Favreau.
Yeah.
Jon Favreau, who just everybody knows now, he knows your product better than you know it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I see how we need to go with that. Him and James Gunn now, as far as that, they're pretty much, everybody wants, the fact that James Gunn is in charge of the DC universe. He just came from Marvel. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's, because, and Marvel's okay with that because they're like, we got Jon Favreau.
Yeah.
And we'll see where that takes us. But it would be fascinating to see where this takes off. So what's a day like for you now? Is it constantly writing or putting together the next project or looking at the next project? Or do you, like my wife puts on big events. She works 5 years in the future, right? So she's doing next year, the year after that, year after that, year after that. How's filmmaking? Is that the way, how does that work?
I mean, there's a lot of downtime in the sense of when you're writing, it's very singular. It is very lonely. Currently, I'm working on the feature script for this. It originally started out as a mini series, like a Band of Brothers style. That would be like the best case scenario, but that's kind of a long shot. So I'm really kind of reinventing it and reorganizing it as a feature script. And so part of my time is spent writing. I'm actually producing another independent film, which we hope to go into production end of the year. So we've spent a lot of time focusing on that too. I was actually location scouting last week. So it's a constant juggle. There's not really a set schedule because things happen, so quickly. And then also I'll pepper in commercial work. Like this weekend, I have a commercial shoot for a client. So, between that, trying to get this other movie off the ground and writing, those are kind of the three big factors that.
Yeah, you've done some pretty big commercial suits. I mean, Airbnb and Cisco. That's we're Cisco family here. So I mean, it's not like you're going out there to Jimmy's jumpsuits. I mean, you're pitching big.
Yeah, and that stuff's always fun. Corporate gigs are good. One, obviously they pay, but also there's a lot less pressure in my mind just because I've been doing it for so long. I grew up in the Bay Area, grew up around all these tech companies, and so it's like, oh, you're spinning a laptop for 10 hours and shooting it. You know what I mean? It's a lot less stressful than, oh my God, this is my passion project and everything has to line up correctly, right? So
this pays the bills and allows me to do what my passion project is.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the idea of Nisei as a series is great. Have you reached out to the streaming services, Netflix, Hulu, all those people, HBO Max?
We've started that process. The problem with doing it as a series is because I'm still technically considered a first-time director, and show running TV is a completely different world. So like, let's say someone does, oh, this is a great idea, we love it. They would probably just want to buy it outright. And so I would lose control of it, and I kind of want to keep it. So
yeah, I mean, yeah, as long as you can drive the car, you should drive the car.
Yeah.
So that's, I find that just fascinating. I could nerd out on films with you all day.
Yeah.
And I know you got a zillion things to do, but I would love to sit back and just do another hour with you where we just sit back and talk about different movies and what you see and who would you cast here? How would you recast this different? Who would you love to? Is there an actor right off the bat that you'd love to work with? I mean, just that you say, yeah, I would find it interesting to put them in a film.
I would love, I was literally talking to someone last night about this. Ken Watanabe, I'd love to work with him, of course. I think he would be great in some of these roles. And actually another actor that I just recently, I started listening to his podcast, John Bernthal. I absolutely love his style, the way he thinks about filmmaking. There's no ego, appreciative of the art, appreciative of everything that's given him in his life, but understanding the process of it and not making it bigger than it needs to be. And I think
wasn't he the Punisher?
The Punisher, yeah. He was in the Pacific too.
Wow.
He got killed off episode 2. Sorry if people haven't, but that's an old show. So
yeah, I can imagine what it's like when an actor, when all of a sudden you see yourself written out. It's like, oh man.
He was just starting out though, so 2 episodes was good for him back then.
Yeah, take it and run with it. Well, man, I've just so enjoyed this, and like I said, I'd love to have you back on and just geek out over films.
Please,
because I think, again, I will jabber on, because I find the film world so fascinating. I find it so interesting. And I love hearing about all the little things that nobody ever thinks about, and all the things that has to happen for anything to happen. I don't care if you see 6 seconds of film, so much work went into that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I want to sit back and figure out, when do you decide to do a stationary camera? When do you decide to do a handheld? When do you do, the moving and that's the director's job.
A combination with cinematographer and everyone else. But yeah, no, I'd love to have that conversation, because even for me, I came from the crew side, right? Outside of school, I didn't direct right away just because, lack of confidence or whatever. But so I actually was a union dolly grip for years. So I did a bunch of TV shows, pushing the camera around and being involved with that stuff. So all that technical stuff, I love talking about it. So
I'm talking to a New York Times bestselling author tomorrow, and I'm going to let him know, hey, if you ever need a director, I know someone. I know a guy. You're going to love him.
Send him Nisei, not Park. Park's a little dated. So
I'll send him Nisei, but I'll sit back and also say, just look at this kid. This guy's something. So, and it's like, all right, that's fun. Darren, thank you. And I look forward to Darren Haruo Rae.
Haruo.
My God, I had 4 shots at it and I've lost it every time.
It's okay.
You go by D Ray, right? I mean, because your website is DHR.
Yeah, I go by Darren. Darren's fine. Keep it easy.
I'm just going to call you Darren. That's what you and I will just, we'll just figure out that's where it's at.
Yeah.
Darren, this has been fascinating. I've so enjoyed it. Good luck to you and Nisei, and check it out. Check out the work. And again, it's DHR is what you'll find online. That's where I found you.
Right. Yeah. And then
Rowan Films.
Rowan Films. And then our Instagram is at Nisei the Film. And that'll be any showings and stuff like that. You can keep up to date with it.
All right. We're going to do this again.
Yeah, definitely.